This is PC Alan Richards. Richards served with West Midlands Police for 30 years. In 2011, he retired on full pension. 5 years later, he was prosecuted for misconduct in public office and also for the sexual assault of 20 young boys, some of which were as young as 8. Like most officers, Richards was entirely unaccountable to anyone. He was also free to abuse every police resource at his disposal as a means to further his own agenda. This meant he could carry out fake rape investigations and have innocent children perform sex acts to exonerate them from his inquiries. He could also approach children on the street, bark commands at them and convince them to do whatever he said under threat of arrest. And if you dared to complain about him, excuses would have been made, brooms swept, carpets lifted and doors slammed. And complaints were made. Many complaints over many years. How many we don't know, as West Midlands Police won't say. Victims and their families reported Richard's behaviour, failing to realise that the police complaints process doesn't exist for the benefit of the public. Its primary purpose is to protect the police. At best, it's an early warning system to help corrupt and negligent officers know that someone who isn't a police officer is trying to hold them to account. The IOPC were complicit in ensuring West Midlands Police never had to reveal the extent of their corruption. They conducted a full investigation into how Richards was free to pursue his crimes unabated for 30 years. On conclusion, they then buried the report, refusing to disclose it on the grounds that it could harm the victims. The fact that it also prevents us knowing how many officers assisted in covering up for Richards is of course mere coincidence. After Richards was prosecuted, the Assistant Chief Constable at the time, Carl Fawkes, sent out a cut and paste letter to all the victims telling them how sorry he was that West Midlands had employed and protected a pervert and how lessons would be learned. One of the victims sent me a copy of the letter. As you would expect from a police apology, it's full of empty corporate platitudes. The only interesting paragraph is where Fawkes admits the complaints process is entirely bent. As a police officer who has spent my career protecting people, it sickens me that at the time he carried out these crimes, he was representing my organisation. Records have shown that complaints were made about him and concerns were raised about his behaviour during the course of his 30 years of police service. I accept that although the matters were investigated and action was taken, Richard's offending was never truly uncovered, and safeguards therefore were not put in place to protect the public appropriately. I know no apology can take away the abuse you suffered, but I'm genuinely sorry that you've been let down. No compensation was ever offered by the force, and West Midlands took so long to prosecute Richards that most of the victims were by then outside of the time limit to sue for compensation. Then we have the case of PC Kevin Hughes of West Mercia Police. He was suspended in December 2009 pending investigation for having sex with underage girls. Of course, none of the subsequent news reports reveal this about him, mostly because PC Hughes did the decent thing that all corrupt cops should do and hung himself. This gave West Mercia the perfect opportunity to bury the investigation with him, and as a result, West Mercia have never publicly admitted that they had a paedophile predator serving their force, nor do we know how many children he abused. It's also alleged that Hughes was found with a number of indecent images on his computer. More recently, we have this incident. The woman in this video alleges that this officer had sex with her when she was underage, and that the man beside her had to eject him from the house.
That of the police officer is the one that you tucked out of my house when I was 15 and he had sex with me.
This one here?
No, the other one that was calling your mate, Terry Cook.
Really? Let's ask him.
He was 22, working at Radio Rentals.
Have you been advised about the number plate?
Is it PC Cook?
Have you been advised?
Is it PC Cook? Is that
Have
who
you
you
been
are?
advised?
I'm just asking you to identify yourself.
My collar number's on my shoulder.
Yeah, but are you PC Cook?
It doesn't matter what my name is.
Do you know this lady here?
Hello.
Hi.
From a long time ago, yes.
Do you remember me throwing you out of our house because she was
No.
underage and you were having sex
No,
with her?
I don't remember that.
Don't you?
No,
You should do.
no.
Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Where do you remember him from?
Oh, when I was 15.
15.
Have you been spoken
People
about
like
in
you
other
make
places
me
before?
sick.
Have you or not?
You're
Can you
a
answer
nonce.
my question or not?
You're a nonce.
Having sex with a minor, regardless of consent, is known as statutory rape. Even though this video had gone viral on social media, I could not find any indication that it had been reported as an offence. So, doing my civic duty, I reported it to the force he worked for. I received this reply. Lies are being prepared for this officer, no doubt, as I speak. I'm sure he'll be afforded the benefit of the doubt that none of us mere mortals are ever allowed, and the occupants of the car can look forward to being smeared as vindictive troublemakers who are trying to ruin the reputation of an honest, hard-working officer. The de facto outcome that all complaint investigators aspire to. Finally, we come to the motherlode of child abuse, Rotherham. The police being complicit in this case by their refusal to investigate or arrest most of those directly responsible. The IPCC, as it was then, has also thrown in its lot with the police in its bid to ensure that no officer is ever held accountable. Back in June 2016, I made a Freedom of Information request to the then IPCC to ask them, among other things, how high up the ranks of South Yorkshire Police this willful refusal to take action against the perpetrators actually went. True to form, the IPCC went into cop protection mode and rejected my request in full. It took 10 months and repeated appeals to the ICO to get them to finally reveal the truth. 24 police constables, 7 sergeants, 4 inspectors, 1 chief inspector, 1 chief superintendent, 1 rank unknown. The ICO upheld the decision of the IPCC not to disclose the highest ranking officer on the basis that it would be too easy to personally identify the officer concerned. Now, it's been 7 years since the Rotherham abuse scandal was made public knowledge, and still the IOPC, which was in the IPCC, has not completed its investigations. But in that time, many of the officers on this list have been alerted by their force that they're the subject of serious investigations and been given the chance to retire on full pension as a means to evade any disciplinary hearings that would have potentially held them to account. Thus far, not a single officer has been prosecuted by the CPS for misconduct in public office, and the chances are none of them ever will be. Police officers as sexual predators has become an epidemic, and yet the police are doing nothing about it. No studies have been undertaken to find out just why so many paedophiles and perverts are drawn to police work. No changes have been made to the recruitment vetting process to weed them out. Instead, the police do what they always do when confronted with an institutional problem. They localise it, isolate it as the actions of a few bad apples, and then deploy the corrupt methods of the complaints process as a means to bury it. But the problem is not going away. And as long as the complaints process aims to protect the false, firstly and foremostly over that of innocent children, then it is nothing more than subterfuge for sexual predators in the false who are trying to evade capture. Meanwhile, PC Alan Richards languishes around in his prison cell serving his well-deserved 20-year sentence, but with one saving grace. And that is, thanks to his corrupt colleagues at West Midlands, Richards got to retire gracefully from the force rather than face the ignominy of being dismissed, and thereby benefit from collecting his pension in full. The PCC of West Midlands eventually took steps to have pension contributions to Richards slashed by 65%, but that action wasn't taken until 2018. When I was a child, my parents, like most, told me that if I was ever lost or in trouble, to find a police officer. Now I'm a parent, I tell my child that if she's ever lost or in trouble, the very worst she could do is to turn to a policeman. Meanwhile, I've made a Freedom of Information request to the IOPC for full disclosure on the Richards report on the basis that it is in the public interest. The names and details of all the victims can easily be redacted, but what the public need to know is how the police complaints process allowed a sexual predator to evade capture again and again, and what steps, if any, West Midlands have taken to protect children in their catchment area from similar pedophile cops. Knowing how rigorously the IOPC protect police officers, I know I have a long and arduous legal battle on my hands to get access to that report. Thanks to all the victims of the officers mentioned in this video who were brave enough to come forward and share with me information that the police would rather we don't know.